Thank you, Madam Speaker. It really is an honour to stand up this afternoon and speak to Bill 206, the Society's Preventing the Promotion of Hate Amendment Act 2018. The intent of the bill to prevent the establishment of hate organizations is laudable. I want to acknowledge the member from Calgary-Klein, my neighbour in North Central Calgary, for bringing forward this bill. As private members, we don't have a lot of opportunity to bring forward any policy directly to the House, and it's really commendable that he's using this opportunity to address the very upsetting and distasteful subject of racism. And we certainly don't need to embolden hate groups by allowing them to create societies for racism or to give them assistance in organizing. By not allowing them to incorporate, the bill reduces access to banking services, public funding sources, and the legitimacy that some of them seek to spread their hate in Alberta. One of my constituency's staff members, Saima Jamal, has worked for decades to overcome racism and hate in Calgary and in the province. And as an anti-racism activist, she knows how pernicious racism is in Calgary, with followers of groups like the Alberta 3%, Soldiers of Odin, and Polish priest Jacek Medler claiming their racism loudly and proudly in Calgary. And she's told me about the impact this hatred has on the communities she works with. Their actions make it explicitly clear that not everyone thinks racism is awful, and that hateful individuals have gained more of a foothold in Alberta. In the 90s, I worked for Shell Nigeria in Calgary, and our workplace was very diverse. Most of my colleagues came from Nigeria, while some were from England and the Caribbean. I was enlightened about racism by my colleagues because I grew up in a small town in northern Alberta, and at that time most of the faces I saw in school and on the streets of my town looked a lot like me. I was privileged to live so long and not see much racism. But they told me that racism in the US was much easier to identify because it was overt. They knew who the racists were. Racism has been deeply embedded in parts of Alberta culture for a long time, but it was mostly hidden. Recently, however, people who hold racist views have been emboldened by the normalization of intolerance in the political discourse, mostly in the US, and on social media. The experience and negative impacts on the tens of thousands of Albertans who experience racism and hate in public, at work, online, and in the receipt of services speaks to the urgent need to address casual and systemic racism in Alberta. We must be active. We cannot be complacent on racism. As elected members of this Assembly, it is incumbent on all of us to moderate our social media pages and remove any intolerant or racist comments. Homophobia, misogyny, sexism, and racism cannot remain unchallenged because to do so is to implicitly approve of them. The Alberta Party stands resolute in our commitment to challenge and remove any intolerant or racist comments in social media. The bill is a good move in challenging hatred, but I would like to see it go further. There are some limitations with the bill, including a gap in the practical ability of the registrar to enforce its provisions. Currently, existing societies receive very little oversight from the registrar about their activities as long as their paperwork is filed regularly. I'd be curious to know if or how the registrar can ensure that Alberta's over 58,000 existing incorporated societies do not have hateful objects or practices, or that their actions under apparently benevolent objects are carried out in inclusive, non-racist, and non-hateful ways. Despite decades of work, the memberships and boards and clients of Alberta's 58,000 plus nonprofits do not consistently represent Alberta's diversity. This bill, as it stands, doesn't address existing embedded racism experienced from Albertans from nonprofit societies. How will the registrar address groups that try to incorporate it by simply hiding their racist intentions under benign appearing objectives? How many Albertans who are members of societies actually read society bylaws or objects? I believe the bill could be made better and more effective than in its current form by being informed by lived experiences. I'm happy to support passing second reading of Bill 206. I look forward to discussing and improving this bill in debate, and I certainly urge all of my colleagues to support this bill as well.